Welcome to the international conference. Oh, wait, I shouldn't use the words international. So, welcome to the global right wing conference, my friends. Today, here, we are a united alliance of everyone from clergymen to the landed gentry to the aristocracy to even tribal chieftains and shamans from various parts of the globe. Today, the Third International might seem to be one single united organization globally. And it's true on the map, but certainly not on the ground level. For there exists a distinct velvet curtain which separates the Western allies from the Russian spear. Now, before delving into this topic, we need to decide where exactly the velvet curtain lies. Now, some might say that the velvet curtain lies between the borders of Germany and Austria, because the Russian spear is one of totalism, while the British and the French spears are much more liberal, let's say, in their attitude. But if we define the borders of the velvet curtain by where totalism begins and anarchism or syndicalism ends, then that would not be apt. Because there lie behind the velvet curtain nations like Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, which are not totalist nations. These nations follow their own socialistic ideologies. And then what about the Western allies themselves? For behind this side of the velvet curtain lies one of the worst totalist regimes and one of the worst regimes in the history of humanity, even worse than what Karl Radic has done in Russia. The nightmarish rule of Benito Mussolini and then Michele Bianchi. But before that, let us take a look at the different Western allies. So first of all, we have the Union of Britain. If there is one thing common between the Anglo-Saxons of Britain and the USA, then that is syndicalism, the so-called rule of the workers. The syndicalists claim to represent the workers in their entirety. Their system of governance basically consists of criminal-minded union leaders vying for power and behaving like rabid dogs and swallowing the government whole. If they were so civilized, then why did our princes and our lords have to flee to Australia? Why did the different families which made America great, like the family of Washington, the family of Kennedy, or the family of Jefferson, have to run away to Australia? Because these people are as violent as the totalists of Russia. Spain is another of the syndicalist regimes, but the Spanish are so primitive, for their industry is so low and so little that in the rural areas, the urban syndicalist communes basically bully the rural areas into obeying their wishes. And then we have the Commune of France, the so-called utopia of anarchy. To understand how to destroy the Commune of France in its entirety, we must first understand how it works. The Commune of France is an anarchy. In theory, every single region and city and province has its own rights and nobody else can control them. But in all honesty and in all practicality, the Commune of France can be best described as the rule of a few urban cities or a large rural environment. For despite all their thoughts of socialist and anarchist utopian glories, the Commune of France is not equal. Because the French are the French after all. In the valleys and forests of the Frankish realm, many of the anarchist commune at the beginning of the war tended to be quite reactionary. So even after all the anarchist utopian laws were passed, the local communes, the local anarcho communes continued to behave in a very reactionary manner. And what did this lead to? Hard crackdowns. Cities like Paris, Marseille, Lyon, Nantes, and Bordeaux. These cities cracked down on the rural interior of France. Today, France is nothing more than a repressive dictatorship of cities. You could compare it to the tyrants of ancient Greece. And that, my friends, is how we can slowly destroy the socialist world from the inside. For if our agents manage to get into the rural interior of France and sow the seeds of dissent, then the anarchist commune will descend into real, pure anarchy. And that's where we will swoop in. Further east of the Commune of France are some of the puppet states of the syndicalist powers. In the Batavian Commune, David Winchcoop led a coup in 1937 with the help of the syndicalists, while Flanders and Brabant were conquered by the victorious powers. Italian troops landed in Flanders in, I think it was, 1942. And since then, there has been a brutal totalist dictatorship here. And then we come to Germany. As many of our friends sitting in this conference today will testify, the German Reich was not always fair, but it was a glorious nation. It was something to behold, something to hold on to. The Kaiserreich was precious to us, and seeing it destroyed bit by bit by criminals like Wilhelm Munzenberg or Karl Liebknecht. No, no, no. My friends, we must stop this. Even neutral Switzerland has now come under the control of the socialist Reds. But let's come back to the horse in the room. Benito Mussolini's radical, nightmarish regime. There is no particular reason why Mussolini does not side with Moscow. One of them has to do with geography, but the other has to do with the sphere of influence in Danubia. Benito Mussolini wanted a greater bite out of the Austrian realms, but the conquest of Austria by the Russians has left Mussolini stranded on the more liberal, quote-unquote, side of the border. To tell you just how bad Mussolini is, with permission from His Holiness, who is sitting in this conference today, and who has been forced out of the Vatican by Mussolini's thugs and now Bianchi's thugs. After coming to power, Mussolini instituted his cultural revolution. Yes, you heard it right. He wanted to destroy the old culture of Italy, Rome. Everything that made Europe great was destroyed bit by bit. Monuments were cordoned off. Old language was made more modern. Old painting and art was banned. Many kinds of old stoneworks were destroyed. The man went as far as to burn crosses in Sicily and ban the usage of the statues of Virgin Mary. But the most height of the cultural revolution was the banning of pasta. He took out food from the mouths of people, and why? Because some of his insane futurist friends told him that pasta made people lethargic and that the modern proletariat does not need pasta. Need I say more about the cruelty of this regime? But if you think Mussolini was cruel, which he certainly was, then behind the velvet curtain is a whole slew of cruelty. In Russia, Karl Radic came to power after defeating Savinkov in the Russian Civil War and then winning the Second Weltkrieg against Germany. Some people say that Karl Radic is a radical among radicals. He doesn't believe in any sort of syndicalist unionism or anarchist utopianism. Radic is nothing more than a red czar. Beginning in 1938, as many of our Russian friends sitting in this conference today will testify, Karl Radic purged hundreds and thousands of soldiers, generals, bureaucrats, government officers, and butchered aristocrats. So many of the most talented people of Russia have been forced to flee to the last remaining island of Australia today. All because of Karl Radic. This one man has destroyed the soul of Russia and fed it to the dogs. And then come his puppet states like East Germany, Danubia. Tell me, friends, if the International was so united, then what reason there was for the division of Germany between the sphere of influences of Russia and France? What answer do these socialists have for that? No, my friends, even today in the modern world, realpolitik is the most important. And then there are some other dogs of Karl Radic, like the Poles, the syndicalists. Then we have Lithuania, which is totalist. The Iskolat Republic. I love how these socialist thugs like to use various different names to portray themselves as a new kind of nation state, birthed out of the ashes of the old one. But we shall not refer to their panderings. This is not Iskolat. This is Latvia. Then in Estonia we have another puppet. And then we come to the more interesting people. In Belarus, Branislav Taraskevich. Initially he sided with the Germans. For much of the early 30s and until the middle of the war, Taraskevich sided completely with Germany and portrayed himself as a social democrat. Oh, they are the worst kind, my friends. The social democrats, they side with us and then they destroy us by plunging the dagger in our back. And that is what he did to the brave Kaiserreich. And then we have the Ukrainian People's Republic. The Ukrainian People's Republic is led by a man who portrays himself as a savior of agriculture. He is an agrarian socialist, and many of his policies involving agriculture are not really accepted by Karl Radic or the International. This is another weak link in the international system which we can take control of. If we manage to convince Ukraine that the totalists and the syndicalists are not for the peasants but for the cities, then I see many chances here. But moving on. In Scandinavia, the countries which were once the birthplace of liberal and social democracy, the original good social democracy, have now become repressive totalitarian dictatorships. Totalism is the new order of the day, and even Iceland is now syndicalist. Much of the Scandinavian aristocracy and landed gentry have fled to Australia, and some of them are with us in this conference today. Then we have some other Russian dogs, like the Romanian Socialist Republic, or the Bulgarian Socialist Republic, the Albanian Socialist Republic, which is by the way under a man called Enver Hoxha, who was once an Islamic socialist. Hoxha's views differ much from the views of be it Michele Bianchi or Pankhurst or Karl Radic, and he still respects Islam. And that is what we can actually take advantage of. Enver Hoxha is another weak link in the socialist system. In Serbia, though, the first genuine Balkan revolution took place. The old man of the socialists, Trifun Trista Kaklerovic, he led a massive coup against the right-wing Serbian regime and now rules as a defiant syndicalist power. though he is not really completely syndicalist. His ideology is one of a workers' dictatorship combined with that of the peasants. Refusing to be taken over by the sphere of influences of Britain, France, or Russia, he stays defiant, and he is another weak link in the system. And then we have Turkey, which is under Recep Fuat Bey, a famously incompetent man. Recep Fuat Bey has forced the Caliph of Islam to flee with us again to Australia. This is one thing we can take advantage of, for we have the strength of Islam on our side now. Jihad can be declared on the Reds. And then, in the Middle East, the Arabs have been completely defeated by the Socialist Republic of Iran, and with their help, most of the Arab lands today are under the control of socialism. Except for Yemen, Yahya al-Hamid is our ally. He is the only source of oil for the remaining right-wing world, and we must put all our support behind Yemen. Even our Muslim friends yearn for taking back Mecca from the socialists. Inshallah, they say, the socialists have opened up Mecca for everyone, even Christians and Jews. We must respect the wishes of our Muslim friends. Mecca must remain exclusive, and once the right-wing revolution strikes across the world, that shall be true again. There are some other smaller Russian statelets, including famously the Bolsheviks who have made a return in Azerbaijan under Mir Jafar Bagirov. The Bolsheviks are actually quite hated by Karl Radic, and it is very surprising how Radic supports the Bolsheviks in Azerbaijan. That could be due to his greed for the oil of Baku. Then Afghanistan is another Soviet puppet state under Nasser Allah Abdul. But let's come back to more immediate dangers. While Australia today is quite safe, we mustn't forget that there are radical socialists sitting on our very doorsteps. The Nusatran commune under Tan Malaka. Tan Malaka is one of a very radical Islamist socialist ideology. He wants a religious leadership, but one which is more fair. He is against extreme radical fundamentalism. Then we have many other dangerous organizations. Today, the Indian alliance stands defiantly independent against the international. The Indians themselves are syndicalist. Shripad Amrit Dange has collectivized the Indian economy and nationalized everything from Balochistan to Bengal and Kashmir to Kanyakumari. But Dange hates the international. He wants an Asia free from the international. And the Nusatran commune, the Philippines, the Burmese, and some others side with Dange's vision. Despite being a Red, Dange can be our loyal ally, and we must cultivate this relationship. But moving on, Mongolia and Manchuria, Korea and Japan are all Russian totalist dictatorships kept in line by the Red armies of their respective nations. There is a very popular movement to restore the Qing dynasty in Manchuria, and His Highness Emperor Puyi resides in Sydney today. We must restore him, friends. In China, a different kind of revolution took place. Hu Zongnan is a man who doesn't believe in parliamentary democracy, despite being a Red. Hu Zongnan wants a radical dictatorship of the proletariat in China. Taking inspiration from Benito Mussolini's Cultural Revolution, Hu has instituted his own cultural revolution in which hundreds of villages, antique sites, monasteries have been burned and destroyed, all in the name of the rebirth of the new China, free from its imperial past. This is another dangerous man, a man who shall lead China to eventual ruin. And then we have other countries like Laos, where a prince of a noble family himself plunged the dagger into his family and became a radical socialist. Then in Vietnam, we have Le Duc Tho, another radical socialist. And in democratic Kampuchea, we have Tau Samoth. Samoth is an orthodox Leninist. He follows the teachings of Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the short-lived October Revolution of 1917. Samoth wants to copy in Kampuchea what Lenin had done in Russia in 1917. Then we have one of our staunch allies, the Kingdom of Thailand under Ananda Mahidol, one of the last remaining bastions of right-wing rule in Southeast Asia. There are some other smaller allies, like Ceylon, which is today at war with the Bharatiya Commune, or Nepal, Bhutan, and the Hermit Kingdom of Tibet, which is now under threat from the Chinese. America is painted red now. From the frigid wastes of northern Canada to the swelteringly humid forests of the Yucatan. America is today completely in the hands of syndicalism. Whether it be Richard Parmenter Petty Pieces' One Big Union Party, or Elizabeth Gurley Finn's Workers' Party, or Vicente Lombardo Toledano's PMT. These people have converted America into its own fortress. But this is where I see opportunity, my friends, because America, despite any color, is after all America. Now that it has won the war, it shall seclude itself from Europe, distance itself. And that is what we want, an America which focuses inward, on its own revolution. Because after this generation, perhaps the next generation shall be quite reluctant to go to war. And if, for example, we were to strike a popular revolution of the right in Britain or France, who knows whether the Americans will even intervene? But it isn't true that the right has no allies in America. Anastasio Somoza of the Central American Republic, or Ramon Grausan Martin of Cuba, Paul Malgoir, or Virgilio Martinez of Haiti and the Dominican Republic respectively. Many of these people are our allies, and we must cultivate new relationships with them. Then we have Costa Rica, which is syndicalist, Panama, which is little more than a glorified American puppet, but again it is syndicalist. That is the problem. All of the major canals of the world today are in the hands of the Reds, whether it be the Panama Canal, the Kiel Canal, or the Suez Canal. Every single artery of world trade is dominated by the left. Many of the people of Australia today are starving because the Reds refuse to lift their embargo on us. For now, we must reach a compromise with them, lest we be destroyed. Then there is a country like Venezuela, which has completely isolated itself from both the right and the left-wing worlds. They follow their own version of social liberalism. And for now, the Reds have accepted them. But other countries are more outwardly socialists. Colombia under Jorge Eliacar Gaitan, which is agrarian socialist, or the Popular Republic of Peru, an old name which wants to pander to Inca nationalists. They are a brutal totalist dictatorship. Gamaliel Churata wants to restore the old days of the Inca Empire because he believes, and wrongly so, that the Inca Empire was some kind of a socialist utopia. My friends, this is pure red insanity. Then we have Brazil, which is again a hardline, brutal Red Army dictatorship centered around Rio de Janeiro. There are many popular bandit warlords, right-wing ones, or old aristocrats who, after having their land seized by the Red government, have now turned to popular banditry, and we must help them. The Amazon shall be painted red with the blood of the Reds. Then we have the Federated Syndicates of Bolivia, which is syndicalist. Chile is totalist. And in Argentina, Severino de Giovanni's brutal dictatorship. Severino de Giovanni has made the destruction of the properties of the rich a law. Nobody is punished if he destroys or even kills the landlords. Giovanni himself is a half-insane man who thinks that revolution can only be achieved on the bodies of the rich. My friends, Giovanni is a mad dog that must be removed. And then there is a country like Uruguay or Chile, which are again both red dictatorships. Lastly, we come to Africa. We began with an ally, the Sultan of Morocco. For now, the Sultan has no other choice but to become a mere dancing doll for the Iberians. It is unknown why the Iberians have not attacked Morocco yet. And I must say with great sadness that even if they did attack, there is nothing we could do about it. Then we have Algeria, where the French have established a semi-Pied Noir, semi-Arabic dictatorship of the proletariat. And there are many other red dictatorships, famously George Padmo's Liberia, which has seized upon the opportunity of revolution to take over a huge amount of lands which once belonged to other countries. He has fulfilled the promise of Greater Liberia. There are many other kinds of totalist dictatorships, warlords, who portray themselves as red to get money and funding from Europe. These people are not genuine socialists. And my friends, if we use some of our funding to give them money, then maybe, just maybe, we can turn them over to our side instead. But Africa is one place where we have lots of allies. Famously, Madagascar, Beembeland, East Africa, where Mohammed Hassan, once in the service of the German Askari, has now established his own right-wing state. He is a staunch ally, and he has also promised to help restore the Kaiser to the throne of Berlin in exchange for some concessions. In Kenya, a similar state exists, this time for Britain. Tom Delamere has established his own post-colonial regime. Delamere has promised the Kenyans independence if they help him to retake Britain from the hands of the Reds. And then we have Ethiopia and Somalia. Emperor Haile Selassie is one of our best friends. But now he's threatened from the Egyptian Republic and the Arab Socialist Republics to the north. What I propose, my friends, is to help Yemen, Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, and East Africa establish their own right-wing bloc and unite with Australia and New Zealand. For my friends, together we stand. United we stand, but divided we fall. And that is where I end my speech today. The world shall be free again, and the days of our old glory shall return.